While the world's superpowers raced to build billion-dollar stealth fighters, one small country quietly changed the rules. No massive budgets, no global empires, just pure engineering genius. And now, that country's creation has just become NATO's newest game-changer. Because Sweden's Gripen jets aren't just joining the alliance, they're redefining what it means to fight smart. For decades, NATO's power in the skies came from giants. American-built F-16s, F-15s, and now the F-35. These aircraft form the muscle of Western air power. But muscle isn't everything. When Sweden officially joined NATO, something remarkable happened. For the first time in modern history, a small neutral nation brought to the table not just its military, but a mindset that the alliance desperately needed. Because while the US focused on stealth and power, Sweden focused on survivability, flexibility, and independence. And at the heart of that philosophy stands one jet, the Saab Gripen EF. The Gripen isn't about size. It's about strategy. Imagine a fighter that doesn't need massive air bases or endless support crews. One that can refuel and rearm in the middle of a frozen highway and be back in the sky within 10 minutes. That's the Gripen. Built to defend a small country surrounded by bigger powers, it was designed with one mission: survive against impossible odds. And now, that same mindset is becoming NATO's greatest weapon. Because in a world where air bases can be destroyed by missiles in minutes, Sweden's approach, fast, flexible, self-sufficient, might just save the alliance. When the Gripen first appeared, many dismissed it.
Experts laughed. A budget fighter, they called it. A cheap alternative for small countries.
After all, how could a single-engine Swedish jet possibly compete with the F-35 or the Eurofighter Typhoon? But here's the twist. It didn't need to. While others were spending hundreds of millions per jet, Sweden's engineers were perfecting a fighter that could outthink its enemies. The Gripen's electronic warfare suite, one of the most advanced in the world, doesn't just jam radars, it manipulates them. It can confuse enemy sensors, feed them false data, and disappear in plain sight. In modern combat, that's far more valuable than raw power, because whoever controls information controls the fight. And now that Sweden is part of NATO, that intelligence-first philosophy is spreading fast. NATO isn't just gaining new jets, it's gaining a new playbook. In a conflict with Russia, the first targets would be NATO's big bases in Germany, Poland, maybe even the Baltics. The goal: ground the alliance before it can even respond. But with Sweden on board, that strategy just got complicated, because Gripens don't need bases. They can take off from roads, refuel from trucks, reload in the forest and vanish again. It's the definition of mobility. And in war, mobility equals survival. Then came the moment that silenced the critics. During joint NATO exercises in Northern Europe, Gripen fighters performed mock engagements alongside and against some of the alliance's best jets. The result shocked observers. Despite being smaller and cheaper, the Gripen consistently held its own, even outperforming in certain electronic warfare scenarios. Its pilots demonstrated that with superior situational awareness, speed, and data sharing, they could outmaneuver opponents long before the fight turned kinetic. It wasn't brute force, it was intelligence, timing, and coordination. A NATO official reportedly said, "When the Gripen flies, the entire battlefield becomes a sensor network." That's the kind of capability NATO never had before. The Gripen's secret isn't just in its design, it's in its philosophy. Where the F-35 is a system built for dominance, the Gripen is a system built for resilience. Think of it like this. The F-35 is a supercomputer in the sky, powerful but dependent on massive support infrastructure. The Gripen is like a smartphone, portable, adaptable, and ready anywhere. If an F-35 needs an aircraft carrier, the Gripen needs a highway. If the F-35 needs an army of technicians, the Gripen needs a handful of crew and a fuel truck. That's why NATO leaders see Sweden's air power as a perfect complement, not competition. It adds something the alliance lacked, a fighter designed to keep flying when everything else can't. Now, let's talk strategy. Sweden's entry into NATO doesn't just expand the alliance's territory. It locks down one of the most critical regions in Europe, the Baltic Sea. For years, Russia has treated the Baltic as its backyard, a zone of intimidation and pressure. But with Sweden and Finland both joining, that backyard just got surrounded by NATO air power. And at the center of it all, Gripen squadrons ready to scramble from hidden bases within minutes. These jets can deploy across northern Europe faster than most militaries can react. They can link with F-35s, Eurofighters, and AWACS systems, forming an invisible digital web across the sky. In military terms, that's a nightmare for any potential aggressor. The Baltic is no longer an open door for Russia. It's a fortress. And here's the irony. The very jet that once symbolized neutrality is now the spearhead of NATO's defense. Sweden didn't build the Gripen for offense. It built it to defend its homeland against overwhelming odds. But that same defensive genius, adaptability, speed, efficiency, is exactly what NATO needed to strengthen its front lines. Because the next big war, if it ever happens, won't be won by who has the loudest jets or the biggest bombs. It'll be won by who can stay in the fight the longest. And in that game, the Gripen gives NATO an edge that no amount of money can buy. Even NATO pilots are taking notes. Many who've trained alongside Swedish crews describe the Gripen's design as pure logic. Everything about it, from the cockpit layout to maintenance procedures, is built for speed and simplicity.
One Swedish pilot once said, "The Gripen is like a friend that helps you think faster."
That's not just poetry, it's military design philosophy. Every second saved on the ground is another second in the air. Every piece of data shared means one less surprise in battle. And in modern warfare, where milliseconds decide outcomes, that's priceless. Now, countries across the world are paying attention. Brazil already operates the Gripen E. Hungary and the Czech Republic are longtime users. Finland, Canada, and others have studied it closely.
Because it's not just about owning a jet. It's about owning freedom. Freedom from massive costs. Freedom from foreign dependence. Freedom to fight smart, not just hard. That's what Sweden brought to NATO. Not just another aircraft, but a whole new mindset.
The message is clear. While others pour billions into complexity, Sweden proves that simplicity, when done right, can outsmart them all.
The Gripen isn't flashy. It doesn't need to be. It's reliable, ready, and relentless. And now it belongs to NATO.
From the icy runways of northern Sweden to the command centers of Brussels, one thing is echoing across the alliance. Brains beat budgets. Sweden may not be the biggest military power, but it just gave NATO something priceless. A fighter that can fly when others can't. A strategy built on survival, not showmanship. And a reminder that sometimes, the smartest weapon comes from the quietest corner of the world. In a sky full of giants, it's the humble Gripen that just changed the game. Sweden didn't join NATO to follow, it joined to lead. Because while others build for power, Sweden builds for victory.